Let's do more NBA draft stuff. We're going to be talking about Ace Bailey. We're going to be talking about Noah Penda, Jeremiah Fears. It is all coming up. Michael Bolton. Well, it's not coming up Michael Bolton. Maybe it is coming up Michael Bolton, but it is coming up Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NBA fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and your best takeaway from today's show is that the ineradicability of hope is there, despite the futility of effort. Does that summarize this podcast? Anyway, keep hoping, keep trying. Wow, positive message. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com. Yes, basketballmonster.com. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Don't forget to hit the thumb on the video and to double bang. We're free. We're available every day. I think I've said that. This has been just a mess of an opening to this show, but that's okay. It's pretty early here. So hit the thumb, double bang, and get all of your draft prospect content here. Yes, please. All right, it is the second draft prospect show that we're doing, so it is time for me to bring in the next draft prospect analyst that we're talking to, and this is the first time for this guy on the show. We're talking to Logan Adams, who you would have seen all over Twitter. You would have seen all over the place, even with his Substack, Prospects and Concepts. Logan, your Twitter account, Logan P. Adams. I'm going to assume the P stands for Prospects.
It's actually my middle name.
Oh, just so close, so close. All right, we're here to talk NBA draft prospects. I'm not going to bore you with hey, what's this draft class like? I think we've got a good idea. We're just going to bang straight into these individual prospects. And I ask everyone who is coming on to give me some guys that they thought were overrated and underrated according to the consensus. And we're going to start straight off with a guy that you told me that you think is a little bit overrated as a prospect. And this is a guy that I think is going to be pretty controversial, because I think the top two prospects in this draft class are relatively safe, secure, determined. But then when we get to pick three is where it gets a little bit different, and that is Ace Bailey, who had that season in Rutgers playing alongside Dylan Harper, the Sixers with pick number 3. A lot of people are projecting him there, but I do seem to think, Logan, at the moment there is maybe a bit of a pushback from that. So some of the stuff you watch from Ace Bailey, you look at the size and you go, oh, that's interesting. Oh, okay, he can do that. And then you watch some of the play and you go, yeah, that's disgusting. What am I seeing here? So when we talk overrated, again, his consensus number 3 at this point, how far off of that are you?
Yeah, so I don't think I like the word overrated for Bailey, but I think misunderstood is probably the better word. There are kind of 3 comps that I think get thrown around quite often when it comes to certain archetypes of prospects, and those are Nikola Jokic, Draymond Green, and Kevin Durant. Very rarely do we see guys come close to hitting that kind of ceiling. Bailey kind of falls into the Kevin Durant third of those prospects. Just big, kind of wingy type players who make shots, take difficult shots, and add a little bit with a handle. As far as Bailey goes, where I think he falls short in that regard, I don't think he is a good enough handler or a passer to really fill in the areas around scoring. I think he does have a very clear-cut role and very clear-cut set of strengths, one of those being the shooting, and then other than that, there's the athleticism and the stuff he's capable of doing on the defensive end. But as far as being a surefire top 3 prospect, I'm just not very sold on some of the things that guys are hyping him up to be.
So he's quite young. He's not 19 yet. He played high usage player. Scored like 19 points per 36 numbers up on the screen. Shot 35% from 3. The easy argument to make against some of the efficiency stuff is like, look who he played with. And at the end of the season, when Dylan Harper was out, like things got way worse. He was taking more contested shots, which is never going to be the case, that he's in a situation where he is that much better than his teammates in the NBA, and he's not going to be forced into some of those ridiculous decision-making situations that he was put in, and often he chose the incorrect decision. I think the problem here is, and these guys are quite different players, but like we've seen top 3 players in the past, like Marvin Bagley, who had incredibly low assist numbers, Jahlil Okafor, not a good passer, and this lack of this awareness of players around you led to those guys, among other things, but really struggling in the NBA. Now, this is a player who's not a center. He's more of a 4/3 but has those problems. And it's very rare that you see a guy playing on the wing who just never passes or doesn't pass well or doesn't have any sort of level of that creation. Do you think that the low creation and low passing sort of stuff from Bailey is more to do with the situation he was in and no trust in teammates, or is it another guy I'll put is John Kuminga, like a complete blindness as to what's going on around him?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a product in some regards to the situation you played in. Rutgers didn't really have a ton of great bigs, didn't have a lot of knockdown shooters on the wing. Led to him kind of creating in these close kind of quarter spaces more often than he probably would have on a better shooting, better built team. And obviously didn't have the lob threats or the offensive rebounding threats to really kind of clean up some of his mistakes or give him more easier options. But some of that stuff is a little self-inflicted. I mean, you look at Dylan Harper and what he was able to do in that offense. He's one of the best shot creators around the rim you're going to find in this class. Bailey just did not have the skills to get downhill, to find his teammates at the rate that some other guys in this class can. I don't think that is damning to him being good in the league, but I just don't think it's going to be his role to be that go-to scorer.
That's going to be the problem there, is it's like always these guys, they play in college, a little bit different for Bailey actually because his teammate was better than him, but a lot of these guys are the best player on their team all the way through, and they get to the NBA and they've got to adjust their role, and sometimes that can take time. Like a name that comes to mind, obviously not nowhere near the same player, but a guy like Aaron Nesmith, who was a completely different player what he did in college, and now he's turned into this tenacious, ball-hawking, high-foul defensive wing where he's like this elite just shooting player coming out of college, and like he still can shoot, but like we didn't see some of this stuff that we saw from him in the NBA versus in college, and that adaptability is always key to these guys. But Bailey's coming from a much higher level of being this highly touted prospect that maybe does need to change some of those things in his game to be able to have that success at the NBA level. I think I go back and forward on him. Like at the moment, I do have him at 3. I could easily see me not having him at 3, but I think the thing that I keep coming back to on this, Logan, is there just aren't that many guys who are 6'7", 6'8", however tall Ace Bailey is, who can come out and who can potentially score like this, who's got the size, who's got the frame, who's got the ability to do this. These guys don't exist. Are there plenty of guys at 6'2" who can shoot and can create? Sure, a lot of those guys. But how many guys at this height have that upside where even if they struggle, even if they can't defend or they can't pass, they're just going to keep getting jobs and they're going to keep having roles and they're going to keep being persistent with it. You go, whoa, well, he's this size and he fills this hole that every team seems to have. And that just keeps bringing me back to him. So, again, if you think that you said about misunderstood as a player, you're not quite as high on him, how far does that idea sort of nag at you and you go, well, yeah, but that size is just, they say you can't teach size and you can't. Does that push you go, well, if it's a tiebreaker, I will go to a player because of that archetype of the size?
Yeah, I mean, when I've tried to do kind of mock drafts, Bailey's kind of like one of those guys where it's like I might have him 10 to 14 in my big board, which I feel like is a reasonable range for kind of the role I'm projecting him as, which is kind of, I hate the term 3 and D, but a guy who can make those shots, do a little off a closeout, and play some really good defense on the help side. I think that's kind of the range I'd have somebody who projects to be really good in that role in. But he's definitely somebody I could see getting taken higher than that, and reasonably so, for all the reasons you mentioned. There's very, very clear upside there. I just think he's got a long ways to go to reach it from a handling, passing, more ancillary standpoint.
Yeah, there's a lot of other things that he needs to be able to work on again, and it can all happen. But we've also seen these sort of players who have this high pedigree, who you go, well, what about the size? What about the upside? What about this creation potential? And it doesn't work. And some it does, but for some it doesn't. And I think, for the next 20 years, we're still always going to be having this debate. Yeah, but let's try it, because if it works, it's great. And if it doesn't, we try it again the next year. But you're always going to lean towards that, because it is so hard to replicate that level of talent and that level of size. Otherwise, you end up like the Chicago Bulls with 6 point guards and no forwards. And that's part of why they paid Patrick Williams as much as they did, because again, they just go, oh, I guess he's sort of that size is important, but you got to be able to do something with that size, and that is always going to be in Ace Bailey's favor. We're going to come back and talk about a guy that you think is a little bit underrated, and I like your pick for this, because I actually do think this guy, here's a guy that I looked into quite a bit last season as well. It's Noah Penda. We'll come back to that in a sec. But today's episode, it is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. And with the NBA playoffs in full swing, the conference finals about to start, you get highlight-worthy performances every night. And that is game-winning shots. It might be passes or blocks or whatever it is. So there's never been a better time to get in on that action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game, either before tip-off or live during the game. Player props, performance trends, same-game parlays. There are more ways than ever to engage and to play smart and to win big. So you can combine your live prop bets on these games in the NBA conference finals. You can see how the game is flowing. Put those bets in, put those props in, and get them into a same game parlay and increase your payout as well. Plus, you can get a $200 bonus in bets if you get your first $5 bet to win. So if you are new to FanDuel, it is the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA, and don't forget to gamble responsibly. All right, Logan, so that will now bring us again to talking about an underrated guy. So we are going to talk about Noah Penda, who again, I did have a little bit of a look at last season as a prospect. There was some talk that he was in the draft and then he removed his name out of that. So he is 20 years of age now as a guy that, I'll just let you take the wheel here on Penda. What is it that you see with him? Because he's projected usually in the 20s in most sort of mock draft big boards. Some I've even seen push into the second round. What are you seeing with him that you think that others might be sleeping on a little bit?
I think it's just kind of a miscast, kind of like what we were talking with Ace. I think a lot of people see him as this 3-and-D wing, just because I feel like European prospects a lot of the times are in a more condensed role, and we only get to see kind of the ball skills or maybe the just high caliber stuff they can do outside of shooting or playing defense so often. For Penda, I think that's kind of becoming less and less of the case. You go tune into his game from the last couple months. He's handling the ball. He's taking it up the court. He's running pick and rolls, and he's doing a damn good job at it. He's still not where you want him to be as a shooter. Added a lot to his arsenal this game, but the percentage is hanging around like 32, 33%. And the free throw indicators aren't the greatest, but it's a step up from where he was. And then obviously you're looking at where he sits on the defensive end, where he is this, he kind of plays that gambler role where he's jumping passing lanes, rotating deep into help. But positionally, he's one of the best one-on-one defenders in this class.
So we had these sort of players, again, it's the size. You're a 6'7", 6'8" wing who can defend and maybe you handle and maybe the shot comes around. We saw a lot of these sort of guys, even in last year's draft, that people took flyers off. Number 1 pick, Zachary Ricochet. We saw Tijan Salan, who's a little bit bigger than that, but he went at pick 6 because this idea of these guys who can play defense and maybe shoot and have this level of size is intriguing. There's other guys in this class. Noah Essengay, again, a similar sort of sized player who is in that mold of maybe the shot comes around, but the defense is already there. So what separates Penda from a lot of these guys, or would you have him higher than guys, especially in this class, like an Essengay, who's at times projected inside the top 10, and Penda's probably not quite at that level?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the top prospect from Europe is either him or Essengay. And for me, what kind of puts Penda in that tier is the handling. It's the creation. It's the stuff he can do to create outside of just attacking a closeout, running up in transition, creating a play on defense. He really has a knack for getting into the lane, maintaining his handle, whether that's backing guys down, driving past them, or simply just relocating and resetting an offense. He's kind of nailed this over the last couple months, and he's only going to get better at it. Like you said, he's only 20 years old. People kind of tend to think that's on the older end, but I mean, he's got a 10, 15-year career ahead of him if he can stay healthy.
In terms of these sort of players, like there's obviously things when we do player comps and the way our brains work to look at guys, and there's things that work based on aesthetics or based on nationality or whatever that brings us across. So I'll ask you, this is a question without notice, you might not have an answer off the top of your head, but who do you think is the best European 3-and-D wing size player that's ever come across the NBA?
I think you're probably looking at somebody like Nick Batum.
Exactly. Thank you.
Somebody that
exactly the name.
Somebody that kind of mirrors a lot of the things that Panda can do. You look at the shots he's taking now from three. Obviously, he still needs to put some of that together. But you're looking at some no-dip stuff now. You're looking at the step backs, the shots out of the pick and roll. The stuff that Nick Batum kind of made a career off being able to do while being in a smaller role. Obviously, the passing's there. The positional versatility on defense and the role versatility on defense is there. But as far as like an American player I might comp him to, I think Neesmith is a good one that you brought up as well.
I can say that. I think Penda's ball handling and passing is probably better or more projectable than Neesmith's was and than currently is. He doesn't really get much of that opportunity. But the Batum one is so interesting because he came in, got that big max deal. People expected a lot, but that's not who he is. He's a lower usage connector, defender who's like a million. He's 36 now. I feel like he could keep playing at this level for 4 more years, just doing stuff that makes teams better. And these players don't always hit. There are plenty of these guys who would come across, look, he's ball handling, he's 6'9", and he's Jean and Musa, and then he does nothing. There are plenty of these guys who come across and do nothing. But the intrigue is there with this sort of a guy that, the shooting's not great, but it's not terrible. You're right about the free throw percentage causing a problem, but generating stuff defensively. Now, there is a difference, obviously, in athleticism between the NBA and playing over in the French, the Jeep Elite One League or whatever it's called. How do you think that Penda's athleticism will hold up against that change in athleticism in the NBA?
I mean, I think you look at some of the stuff that he does athletically. He's not obviously going to blow your mind with his vertical, but he's a guy who is really quick on that first step. He might not accelerate to a whole new speed after that first step, but it's real 0 to 60 right away. And that is just as fast east to west as it is north to south. So he's got great recovery speed. He really, I think if you go back and watch some of the FIBA U20 tape where he was on that champion squad next to Zachary Perry, he blew up a lot of 2-on-1 situations just by being long, being in a stance, and being able to move quick laterally. And then obviously from a strength perspective, he's walled off a lot of the best handlers in that league just by being able to get his chest into them, put his arms out wide, and hold his ground with a low center of gravity. I think as far as defenders go, one of the things that I'm looking at more recently is kind of where their hips and their center of gravity is. Panda is low as far as pretty low for a 6'8", 6'7" guy. It's about as good as you can get.
We're going to talk about Jeremiah Fears, who's a top prospect. We're going to talk about him a little bit later, but I want to just quickly touch on another guard back in the college system, Tahaad Pettiford. I'm sure am I mispronouncing that? I hope I'm getting that correct.
Yeah, like Tahaad Pettiford.
Tahaad Pettiford, there you go. Good. Sometimes I just haven't heard these guys' names pronounced out loud, and I go, I think that's right. Now, we're talking about a guy, again, one of these guys that comes in, like earlier discussion about, hey, you find a 6'7", 6'8" wing, these are hard to find, but we can find 6'1", 6'2", 6'3" guards who score and are fast. There's a lot of those sort of guys, and that's sort of where we get with Pettiford, who played off the bench for Auburn this year. He is short, like he is small. He's shot 37% from three. The free throw numbers were good. There's some solid steal numbers there with Pettiford, but the size is the question, Logan. Is it just too much to overcome?
I mean, singularly, kind of coming back to the size in a second, he's probably my favorite watch in this class. Just an electric guard. Registered one of the highest verticals at the combine. You see that when he's out in transition, when he's attacking downhill. Really knows how to use a screen, really knows how to find his shot. But like you said, he's small. He's I think 6'1.5" without shoes.
Yep.
he's going to have the challenges that a lot of guys that size kind of have. Now, philosophically, defense from those type of guys is kind of down the list for me. I think if you're providing what you provide offensively as a shooter, as a ball handler, as a passer, which he provides all those in spades, you can kind of get away with being a little more hidden defensively. That said, I think he does have kind of this knack and this hustle to make plays with. He has the athleticism, like we said, to attack those passing lanes, even get up and contest on some smaller guys getting to the rim. But he will be hampered by those size. I think, though, you have a lot of examples of guys like that in the NBA that kind of get boiled down to just the best of the best. But you've got Trae Young, you've got Darius Garland, you got Jalen Brunson, all these guys who are under 6'3", making impact, making all-star games. Tahaad might not be on that level, but I think he's going to be very, very good.
We've also had two guards in recent memory who are about this height, if not smaller, who have been very good defensively as starting point guards. And obviously, you're talking the elite of the elite in Chris Paul, but Fred VanVleet also was like, there's no way Fred VanVleet's 6'1.5", and he's not that high at all, but he is a very, very good defensive point guard. So it's not impossible that players of this size can have impacts on that end. It's just about, commitment and positioning and all that sort of stuff and instincts. So it's not like a complete write-off at all times for someone this. So it just makes it harder, that challenge to get there. Like if you can only bring up a few names who have succeeded in doing it, that is obviously a tougher challenge to get there. What about the shooting for him? So 37% from three last season at Auburn. Is he a guy that you look at as, okay, that's really good? Is it coming on catch and shoots? Is he doing self-created? Can he push to be a 40% guy? Like, where do you think that shooting can get to?
I mean, I think for the first however many games, first half season he was shooting at around 40%. And the word that comes to mind when you just kind of watch the tape, see the shots he's taking, is kind of just dynamicism. He's taking these off of pick and rolls. He's taking these from deep. He's taking these off step backs. A lot of them are self-created. I don't have an exact percentage, but he knocks down the catch and shoot shots too. I think this is a guy who can really, really shoot it. 37%, like you said, isn't obviously on the elite end, but it's very good for the shots he's taking, and I think it'll translate perfectly to the league.
We're going to come back in a second, talk about another smaller guard, this one, who is projected to go a little bit higher. So we might as well just go into talking about Jeremiah Fears now. Now, I did my first mock draft after the lottery, and I didn't put Fears in the top 14 because I feel like there's an area at the end of that first round where I just don't know. Like, I don't know what those teams are looking for in terms of guards. A lot of them are like, I don't think you need another point guard there. I'm not sure that this fits. And every team I tried to fit him into, it's like, if he doesn't go at 6, maybe does he go at 15? And I just didn't really know what to do with Jeremiah Fears. Now, this again, a guy he's not super small, but he's not super big. But okay, let's start with the elephant in the room here. He shot 28% from three. Like, okay, what's going on? Is he just going to be a non-shooter? But he shot these free throws extraordinarily well. What do we make of the fact that number is like a horrific three-point shooting number?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's the caliber of shooter currently that somebody like Tahaad or even somebody like Colin Knipple is. But he does have the mechanical strengths at the free throw line, like you said. I just think it's a lot of those self-created shots, and it's not something that was his bread and butter coming to Oklahoma either. I think he'll be a decent shooter, but there is a ways to go there, and I think that 28%, like you said, is probably going to cause him to go on a bit of a slide. I really like him. I think he's great in many different regards. He's one of the more creative pick and roll ball handlers in this class, one of the more creative shot takers. Like we said, he kind of has been struggling to make them. But really one of those guys that prints out paint touches, gets deep pretty much on every single one of his drives. And even though he hasn't really finished it, you like what you see up until the point the shot hits the rim.
What do you make of, like, okay, his size? He's not super small. Like, I think he's got enough size. Do you think that makes him like a guy that's going to be, because obviously incredibly high usage at Oklahoma, over 30%. Will he be a usage-driven guard in the NBA, or will he be more of a combo guard who will work on the driving, will do stuff defensively? Like, is he that engine sort of a player with his pick and roll ability, or is he going to have to adapt that and pull that back down quite a bit?
I think he's definitely more of a point guard. I think his passing stats kind of aren't the greatest. He was a turnover heavy, really turnover heavy guy to start the season. Brought that down throughout, but you look at the passes he's able to make. He can do it both hands. He can go spray the shooters. He can hit the big, and he's a guy who can really like run a play. I think down the course of the season, when you got in tournament play and NCAA tournament play, he was really good at just kind of like getting that offense established. He'd hit guys in transition. He hits the big very, very well. I think he's definitely a point guard. You just kind of hope that shot making comes along so that it makes the playmaking more dangerous.
Yeah, that's going to be the thing about just everything plays off everything. Like, if you can be a reliable shooter, it opens up more for you to drive, it opens up more for you to pass, it opens up more for you to kick out to all these guys. And then if you can't shoot, no one respects it. You got no space to drive, that you don't get anyone coming in on double teams, you don't get any of that stuff opening up. So everything always has to work in concert with each other to be able to get to that level. In terms of pick and roll operation, where do you sort of place him in terms of this class? Is he if you're looking for, hey, I want a pick and roll point guard, is he the guy that you go to? Are there better options out there? Like, where is he sitting in that sort of a hierarchical level?
He's certainly up there. I think if you're looking for somebody who's just going to score, you're going Dylan Harper. If you're looking for somebody who can really like just pass, find the guys you want him to find, you're looking at Igor Demin. But I think if you're looking for somebody who has the upside to really create out of there, you're looking at somebody like Fears. He's athletic. He has that first step that you want in a guard who's going to be handling a lot. He has this kind of just like artistic way of handling the ball where he's not really necessarily bound to kind of like what is a good place to dribble, but he makes it work. He's throwing out spin moves and crossovers and just kind of these street ball moves that you kind of see Allen Iverson and stuff like that doing. He's not AI, but you can kind of see his influences there, and a lot of those guys are very dangerous pick and roll handlers as well.
The last thing on Fears here is that I'm sure that you have seen this website, the NBA Draft Comp app, where it compares advanced numbers and per 40 numbers and gives similarity scores. And I've done that for Fears for his base numbers and his advanced numbers, and two names came out, and it's a very different level of the I guess maybe this is like a range of outcomes. In terms of his per 40 comparisons, it's his former Oklahoma point guard Trae Young, high usage guy, solid assist rate, took his threes in college, nice. Trae had a good steal rate as well. He's the highest similarity. If you look at the advanced stats, the highest similarity is Tony Wroten, and you don't want to be compared to Tony Wroten as an NBA prospect, a guy that obviously drove into the paint a lot and took some of the worst shots you'll ever see and was completely inefficient. So do you think that there is that actual wide of a range of an outcome for what Fears is able to do? Not saying he'll hit to Trae Young or be as bad as Wroten, but is that level of boom or bust sort of the problem here with where you consider Fears to go?
I think that's definitely it. Like, obviously the one thing you're looking for from any basketball players is, can you make shots? Bill Russell said it best, the game's about a bucket. You need to be able to put the ball in the basket. Fears was, if you look at the half-court numbers, kind of well below the tier of guys that you like, who were great at finishing at the rim. That's Harper, that's Pettiford. He wasn't really just finishing on a lot of those looks, even though he's printing out those paint touches, like I said. And then you get to the shooting. I think he shot a good bit better on his pull-up twos than he did his pull-up threes. But you need to be able to make those NBA shots, which are the catch-and-shoot threes, the layups, just the shots that you need to make. He didn't really do well doing. Now, there's clearly a kind of pathway to success in that role. He has all the traits up until the shot goes up. It's just about that aspect of finishing the play.
We've got one more guy we're going to talk about. Let's get into this final player now. We're going to head to Duke for about the 5th NBA draft prospect on this team. It is Sion James, which is just a name. I don't know why I find this name so funny. It's not even funny. It's like, okay, I feel like it's just creating a player through NBA stars and just mixing their names together. Obviously, Zion and Sion, not quite the same, but similar enough. He transferred across to Duke, low usage guard. What is Sion James, who's probably going to be a second round pick? Logan, what is his calling card?
I mean, he's your prototypical Swiss Army knife. There were games where he would play point guard for Duke. There were games where he'd sit in the corner, and there were games where he'd be a help defender at the nail. There were games where he's taken on the best perimeter defender or perimeter offensive player. Regardless of what role he was in, he found value, and it wasn't always a high usage role. He wasn't always the guy creating or finishing the play, but he was great at setting up, filling the gaps. And I think when you're looking for a wing that isn't a star, that's kind of what you're looking for, is the ability to fill the gaps.
I think the question that I would have then about this is, okay, so he did all these little things. He's playing on this team with probably 3 top 10 picks on it at least. Well, not at least. There'll be 3 top 10 picks coming out of Duke, I'm guessing. Is he one of those guys, like I think we've seen a little bit within the past, some guys coming out of Connecticut who benefit from having all these high-level teammates who get drafted. Would we be considering Sion James as a draftable prospect if he wasn't doing this role, which honestly almost translates straight across from what he would do at Duke to what he does in the NBA? But if he was forced into a larger role, a larger offensive role, playing for, I can't remember where he transferred for, I'm just going to say Tulane, and he couldn't do these things, would we be going, oh, well, this is just a nothing player? Like, how much does that context of being put in a role where he didn't have to be the number one guy, he could just be that player who just filled in and plugged all the gaps, and NBA teams would go, oh yeah, I see that, you can just come and do that for us. How much of a factor is that, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, when you're looking for those guys, you're looking for traits that kind of scaled up at the college level, whether that is the ability to take on a pick and roll, outlier defensive traits like you see with like on the T. Thibault, whose offensive numbers obviously weren't gaudy at Washington. Sion's weren't even eye-popping at Tulane. But you look at the kind of skill set he brings, it's transferred perfectly from a lesser team in Tulane to a national championship contender in Duke. And I think the kind of mindset that a lot of scouts and teams are going to have is, why can't he do that to the next level? Now, it might take some time. It might take some development, especially the shot is kind of hovering around like above average, maybe even limited in some regards. But you kind of just hope that those come along, and then the skill set that he can bring to a team with his passing, with his defending, with his athleticism, kind of just gets put on the table.
He shot, like, people will look at the stats if they're watching this video, they'll look and say, he shot 41% from 3. What are you talking about? He's shooting. He shot 52% from the field, but he didn't take threes. Like, what did he attempt? Like, under 2 threes a game? Like, the usage is so low here. And while the free throw percentage is good and that does translate across, I think expecting him to be that level of a shooter is, that's a real sample size issue to me, that I don't think that's a real number that you can bank on. But of course, he did it over the course of whatever many games that is, 30, 40 games almost. He did that. He shot those numbers, but it feels a little misleading.
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of in that like Isaac Okoro been a guys where he's really kind of just he's really kind of just feeding off of what other people do. And you look at the quality of shots that he shot, and you can see where that 40% comes from. If you don't knock down 40% of those shots, you're looking at somebody who just is a non-NBA player. Were you going to say something? Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say that when you talk about like defensive ability, the shooting, again, I think we're all pretty much like, okay, if he can develop into a respectable shooter, that's useful, obviously, for what you can do in the league, because then teams have to provide at least some level of cover. But defensively, right, so 1.2 steals per 36 minutes is not a very high number, but he makes his money being this defensive guy. There's been plenty of players who have come in and not been big defensive stat generators while being good defenders. Do you think there is more for him in terms of being able to be a defensive playmaker, or is he just that solid positional type defender who just makes things better without actually generating events?
Yeah, I think what you're looking for in Sion is just to be plus in so many categories that you don't really need to be elite in a lot of them. So he's obviously a good positional defender. He can play a little bit on the nail. He's long enough to kind of impact drivers going by his space. And he's strong enough to wall off guys. But, he's not big enough to be a rim protector. He's not quick enough necessarily to stay with the quickest guards. But he fills a lot of gaps on both ends. He hits the open shots, like we said. He plays solid, not elite defense. He's a great passer, but not necessarily an initiator. For some people, that might push people away because it's like, well, I need somebody who can be elite at least one thing. But Sion might just be so good at so many aspects of the game, you can't keep him off the court.
He's an interesting guy for sure with that connectability, and we've already seen the ability to scale down into a role which is going to be needed for him in the NBA. So he's someone to watch in that second round. Logan, thank you for coming on and chatting to me about all these draft prospects. Again, give your stuff a bit of a plug, the work that you do, your Substack, your Twitter account, and other things that you've got potentially coming out pretty soon.
Yeah, so the main thing is going to be my Substack page. It's called Prospects and Concepts. I will be having my final big board coming out sometime in the next month, which will be 75 to 100 players. I haven't decided yet. But other than that, it's semi-consistent articles from me and the other writer on there. His name's Amina. And other than that, you can look at my Twitter. I talk just about draft stuff all the time. I think I'm a good follow from that standpoint if you're just looking for somebody who's talking about the niche stuff and even the kind of mainstream stuff. Other than that, I'm a writer for mid-major basketball. I just posted my first piece with them on a couple of the mid-major prospects that are coming into this year's draft. So yeah, go check that out. It's all in my bio. Logan P. Adams on Twitter. So I'd really appreciate it if you gave it a look.
Go check all that stuff out from Logan. It's been great having you on for the first time discussing all of these draft prospects that we got into. Thanks again, man, for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
All right, so that's that. First time we've had Logan on, and great insights. Always good to get different perspectives. People who've been doing it for a long time. Logan has been doing it for a while. Obviously, he's younger in the space, but all these different perspectives are so interesting for us as we build our knowledge base for dynasty leagues, for redraft leagues. And look, when we talk redrafts, there's probably going to be 4 or 5 guys out of this draft class that get drafted. Cooper Flagg going to be one of those who's probably going to be a top 50, top 40 guy when drafts come around. But there are going to be some other little guys that step up and have some roles depending on where they fall. And in Dynasty, this is a much more loaded class than last season. The next draft is also at a similar level to this one too. So you're going to be wanting to pay more attention to this grouping of players. Hit the thumb, subscribe. We've got more of this stuff coming tomorrow. Let me double check. Which players do we have coming on tomorrow? We have got a differing opinion on Derek Queen. We have got Con Knipple. We're talking VJ Edgecombe. We've got Maxime Reynaud and Walter Clayton Jr. coming up for tomorrow's show. So I'm excited to talk about all of that. I will see you then. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.